Left against UBI. I never thought that would be a subject that would actually be able to be discussed. I never thought somebody would say on the left, no, it's a terrible idea. And I must confess that when I saw some prominent voices like Sam Cedar, I saw Michael Brooks on the left making a case against UBI, I had a really hard time listening. And I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my absolute best to be objective about this, but of course it's really hard to do. So I do apologize. I do apologize because, of course, everybody has a bias. So I'm going to try to make it to where this video is about the concern, and then I guess you could say my rebuttal or my opinion why that is not something that is as worrying as I make it to be. So the first critique that you will hear from people on the left about UBI is that it's not truly universal. The idea being that if everybody doesn't get it, because either you opt out, you say, no, I don't want UBI, or you decide that you prefer to keep your current benefits because they are better than UBI, or you receive more benefits because, according to the program, at least the way that it was presented at the very beginning, and I understand that there's been a change here, but the website still reflects the idea, the initial idea, is that if you are on disability per se, or you receive food stamps of some sort, and you want to get UBI, you would elect UBI and forfeit your current social program. So the critique here is that that automatically doesn't make it universal, because not everybody's not going to get it. Some people are going to opt out. They're going to get more benefits if they don't get it. And I understand that. Okay, I don't say that that's not true. But the rebuttal, I guess my point here, or why I think it's not as bad as they make it to be, is because for the most part, and I think we can't argue against freedom, right? And this is the idea that I always come back to. Choice is always good. Freedom to choose is always good. If you're arguing against freedom, 99% of the time you are on the wrong side of the argument. So, which is to say that if somebody finds that their benefits are better than the $1,000 a month, and they can keep their benefits and they're not being stripped, they're not going to be kicked out. It's not like all of a sudden, hey, you know what, you were getting food stamps and what have you. You want to keep your food stamps, okay, fine, but now you're going to get less food stamp, dollar amount or what have you. If that's not happening, then we are not really stripping people's, I guess you could say, safety net from under their feet. They're not literally walking away with nothing just because they chose not to go with $1,000 a month. They get to keep their current benefits. So can I see a scenario to where $1,000 is not nearly enough for somebody to cover their living expenses? Of course, there's countless scenarios. And if somebody has like a very dire health situation, it is very reasonable that it's going to be over $1,000. More so because the healthcare system here in the U.S., at least, it's very corrupt, very expensive, and I honestly don't think you can do anything with $1,000 if you have a pre-existing condition, something that is very serious. So I understand what they mean, but again, because you're given a choice, I don't think the concern there is, or at least the mental bandwidth being put on that particular aspect of it, is necessary. The other critique I see some people on the left making is that it is a Trojan horse. So UBI is a Trojan horse, and they say this because, and they quote ideas that Milton Friedman, for example, said, and some other more libertarian, more right-wing philosophers and economists. Well, Friedman was an economist, but they say, oh no, Andrew Yang is using these quotes as he looks up to these people, and therefore he's a Trojan horse. And I don't know what to say about that. I mean, I understand what they mean, but at the same time, and here's, I guess you could say, my rebuttal, is that I think that you want somebody that is well-rounded, somebody that understands all the arguments from all sides of the political spectrum. I think that is something that we do often, and it's a terrible thing that we default to just loving our echo chambers. So we believe that nothing that a right wing person can say is of value because it was said by a right wing mind. And there's some studies that suggest that we actually have, I guess you could say, genetic tendencies to be either more liberal minded or more conservative minded. So if that is the case, you're kind of, I don't know, like separating yourself from half the population of the earth. And I think there is value to hearing arguments that don't agree with your worldview, not because you're going to adopt them, but because you're going to try to extract what is good from them and apply them to your own ideas. So there's that aspect there that I think some people are failing to admit. And the other one, which I think is even more important, is the fact that they're calling it a Trojan horse is because they believe that it's going to get used to UBI, if implemented, it would be used to destroy the current welfare system that we have, right? So they're gonna, not necessarily Andrew Yang if he was to be elected, but let's say Republican in the Senate, or if a Republican president takes over and after UBI has been implemented, and they would use UBI as a cover, as a shield, so that they can gut the welfare system. So like, okay, so now we're giving people $1,000 a month. So why do we have such and such, and then cut the social program or the federal program to be more concise? And I think that that's valid, but here are the things that we might not be considering. One is, can a federal program outlive its usefulness? So, which is to say, if the problem that it was there to fix is not a problem anymore, or at least not in the same way or not in the same dimension, then does it still need to exist? Right, so that's a good question to ask, and maybe that's one that we're not asking if we just stop at the first part of this concern of the critique. Because, of course, we know that we have a health crisis, we have an opioid crisis, we have all these things going on in the country, and there is something to be said about the state of mind of the people that are, participating, I guess you could say, in our current economic system. Like, are they consuming opioids just because they want to kill themselves? I mean, of course, it's layered, it's very nuanced, and I'm not trying to be insensitive, but there is something to be said about, the fact that our life expectancy is going down, that there's more people that are depressed, the younger people are getting depressed, and I don't think that is entirely connected to, the right wing or things that the right wing is doing. I think it's more something that is happening to us as a society. We're moving to an online existence. Social media is taking a big role in this. And even though UBI is not necessarily the thing to fix it, it is meant, or at least it has been proposed as a way to alleviate the anxiety and the uncertainty that people have because they don't know what's going to happen to them. And there's some studies about this. If somebody wants to really read up on facts, read up on the information that's out there, there's a book called Utopia for Realists that is actually has priceless information, studies that they have done, and a bunch of things that you can default to when you're having a conversation with somebody over UBI, because they tend to say it's never worked, it'll never work, and while there's actually information out there where it has worked and it has improved, and some studies to where they prove that even IQ on people goes up and down depending on their level of anxiety that they have. So of course it's very layered, very nuanced, but again, if social programs get cut, and I'm not saying they're going to, but if a social program gets cut because the problem that it was trying to solve is not as big, not as horrible anymore, then I don't know if that's a bad thing. And you can look up social programs, or more broadly said, federal programs that were cut because they were not needed anymore. Like, there's one that comes to mind where the government was involved in bringing electricity to rural areas, and now we don't seem to have an issue there, so I don't think the program exists anymore. So is that a bad thing? Are people without electricity now? Well, maybe there is some places out there, but the point is that the problem was solved, or somewhat solved, and now the program doesn't exist anymore. And the other element that is also part of this conversation is the system of incentives and deterrence that we currently have. So there's been countless videos about this. I even made a video not that long ago about it, the poverty trap, and I'm going to link this also on this post, on this video. It's going to be in the bottom if you want to take a look at it. But to put it very short, as short as I can, is there's actually studies that have been conducted here to where they see how many people went into like disability or what have you, and how many people came out of disability, and the numbers don't lie. It seems like our people are not getting better. So once they go into disability, for some reason or another, they never come out. And I doubt that it's because they don't want to come out. And to say that they don't want to come out, it would be something that would have to be proven by somebody, or that they cannot. I think that they get trapped because of uncertainty. You know, they're not going to go out there and get a job that is going to pay them enough, and they don't want to give up on their current benefits because it's not safe to do so. And so if we are going to come up with new policy, with new ways to improve life, which is, I think, is the idea of governance, ideally, of course, it has to be something that is aligned with incentives and deterrence, so that people are going to act the best way in their best interest because of the system, and not a system that actually seems to keep people trapped. Oh no, don't do anything, because if you do, we're going to take your benefits away, so don't improve your life, which seems to be, sadly enough, part of the equation, part of what's happening right now. And the other critique, which I think is also valid, but I think it's also they're not looking at it from a macro sense. It's this whole idea that VAT, which is something that Andrew Yang is proposing, you know, the value added tax, is extremely regressive. And yes, I mean, I brought this up in a conversation I was having with somebody. I brought up the fact that a bunch of nations that are doing, at least from the outside, I don't live there, but from the outside, they seem to be doing a lot of things better than us, have VAT. And I don't think people there are necessarily complaining. You know, we have developed nations and you know, in Europe that have VAT, and the VAT that is being proposed by Andrew Yang is not even at that level. So I don't know what the numbers are, but I think it's 25%. What the people pay in VAT in Germany or what have you, and what is being proposed, as far as I know, and if I'm wrong, I do apologize, it's 10% here. So, and the idea why it's regressive, and I get that critique, is because people that have less means, which is to say people that spend all their income in living, are percentage-wise the ones that pay most of the tax. You know, because let's say if I make $15,000 a year and I spend everything, because I need to spend everything in living, then without a doubt, then I'm going to pay $1,500 in VAT. Okay, I'm using very simple math, but just to so that my point comes across easily. Versus somebody who is a millionaire, makes a bunch of money, and he puts money away. So even though he might be paying the same amount in percentage as us, when compared to, or in contrast to the amount of money that they make, they're going to pay way, way less, because they're not going to spend it all. Okay, I think that's a valid concern, but let's also let's look at it from a different angle. Let's analyze it from a different angle. So for one, yes, that's true. But number two, because we're talking about 10%, right? In order for somebody who is living exclusively on Yang bucks, which I don't think most people are going to do that. Like I, for one, if this was to happen, that wouldn't be my income, and then I would be, okay, that's it, I'm not doing anything. That wouldn't be me. But the point being is that if I was making only 12K a year, right? I'm somebody who can only live on my basic income. In order for me to spend all of my Yang bucks, right, in taxes, I would have to spend $120,000, you know, 1 year in purchasing things, right, to be able to spend so that all my Yang bucks go right back into the system. So now, of course, that is a bit of a straw man there, because, and I know some people are going to call me out on it, but the point I'm trying to make is that I don't think it is so difficult to see how the tax itself becomes more of a luxury tax, you know, because if there is somebody that is buying that much, like buying a crazy amount of things, more than they need to live, and we have a VAT, well, then that person's going to be paying most of the taxes that are going towards funding this to begin with. Now, the other element that has been discussed, and I think Andrew Yang should talk a little more about this, is not putting everything under the VAT. So basically, talking about maybe having some primary items of or items of primary necessity not included on the VAT. And I can think off the top of my head, like bread, milk, eggs, things that diapers maybe, things that like the most people are going to use and poor people are going to use the most. So those would be exempt from VAT. Now, I realize he has not clarified his position on this, or at least he hasn't given a list of items. I think maybe that's something that they can work with, or he should work with, and put that out there so that at least this critique kind of gets put, to rest, because I don't think it's something so concerning to begin with. But again, the critique is valid. So I guess the point I'm trying to make, and to conclude this video, is that some people might say that UBI could be the way that we destroy humanity. I don't know, gut all of the safety nets that we fought so hard to have, and in that sense, they say, oh, if you're advocating for it, you're like an anti-humanist of some sorts. But I don't know. And the point where I say that I don't think that's fair. That's a fair analysis of people that are advocating for UBI is because honestly, I think something that is supported bipartisan, something that right wing and left wing minded people kind of should already give you an indication that is possibly a good answer or a good step forward, right? It should give you a good indication. But if it doesn't, think about what we have been doing for the past decades. We've been more and more creating safety nets, more and more fighting for things to help the little guy. And for some reason or another, and of course there's a gigantic conversation to have here, we keep on digging the hole deeper. So we keep on having more people depressed, we keep on creating more social anxieties, etc., etc. So even though the intentions are good and all, we might not have been approaching it in a way that is sensible or pragmatic. So I would submit to you that if we do nothing and we continue the path that we are on right now, if we continue this fight and bickering between the right and the left eating itself, and the right generating more extreme right-wingers almost a year after year, we are basically being the opposite of a humanist. We're kind of being anti-humanists. And I think that's exactly how we end up, really, I don't know, wreaking havoc on society. All right, so that's going to be it for the video. I hope it wasn't too long. But if you believe that my, I guess you could say, rebuttals are valid, or if they're not, and you would like to leave a comment, please do so. I know this conversation is going to take forever to hash out. It might never be completely hashed out, but it's something that I think we should all be engaging in. All right, until next time.